My name is Rick Gamble. I attend the Gathering Church. We first started at the Gathering in March of 2023, so I was excited to come over to the Gathering. What I didn't realize that God called us to be here, and we've been here ever since, and that's exciting. I'm going to share, though, part of my testimony today, which took place in California, back when I was much younger and not as wise, I would hope. But God is with us all the time as Christians, and we need to understand that He's not going to leave us, and He's not going to let us wander off the road when He has called us to do something. I was attending the church called in San Leandro, California, called the Lighthouse. Our pastor who founded the church, it was very similar to what we had now, where we rented a place there, and we were growing. But after a couple of years, he decided to take a position as a pastor in Beijing, China, at the American Embassy, where the Christians there met on Sundays. And so I filled in for a while. We were hoping to get a regular pastor, and it didn't work out that way. And for a long time, I was doing most of the teaching, which leads me to the day that changed my life completely as a Christian. July 20th, 1980. I was 35 years old, almost 36. And 2 weeks before that date, the three boys, my wife and I, were sleeping. And in the middle of the night, I could hear singing going on in the house. And we had in our house an intercom system that it could play AM and FM radio. It had speakers in all the bedrooms and all throughout the house. And I thought, well, who would have left that on? So I got up to turn it off. But when I got to the kitchen where the controller was, it was off. And over in the front room, or living room as we called it, near the fireplace where we had this giant cross, the singing was coming from there. But when I turned the light on, there was nobody there. But I could hear it over and over. Freely you received, freely give. So I listened 3 or 4 times, and I thought, okay, I got that. So I talked to the invisible people, which probably were angels, I realized later. I said, I'm going to go look it up in the Bible tomorrow. I'm going back to bed. And I did. And when I went back into the bedroom to lay down, the music stopped. The singing stopped. The next morning, I got up and I went to my Bible. And I found freely you receive, freely give in Matthew chapter 10, verse 8. And it talked about healing the sick, raise the dead, casting out demons. Freely you received, freely give. Oh, that made me a little nervous, but I said, I know what that means. But what I didn't know or didn't realize until my eyes actually glanced over to the right side of the page was verse 27 in the same, in fact, I just have this here and I'll read the whole thing. What I tell you in the dark, say in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim in the housetops. I thought, okay. 4 days later, we had an elders meeting. I was the newest of the elders in there, and normally I would go along with whatever they were saying, but I said, I got something to tell you. This happened the other night. And so Bob Chaplin, the head elder at the time, said, okay, so what happened? So I told him exactly what I just told you on sitting here. And he said, what do you think? I said, I think we're supposed to have a healing service at the Lighthouse. But we need to give time for the people in our church to, if they know other people, other friends, other family who need healing, that they should come because God's going to heal them. He said, okay, let's do it. So we set the date, July 20th, 1980. It was right after my birthday. So now I just had a birthday. I'm a year older, but I wasn't a year wiser. I was nervous. As a coach and the athletic director of the high school, local high school, I was busy, but I didn't worry about any sports at that point. I prayed, I fasted, I listened to some of the best preachers that I had tapes of. I mean, it was, and as it got closer, I kept praying longer and longer. 2 days, 3 days before, right, Thursday, I guess it was, before the Sunday, as I'm praying, I got this word that said, keep the center aisle open. And what that meant to me is normally if I prayed for people at the end of a service, they would come up the center aisle. And I was supposed to have everybody come up to be prayed for on the left aisle. I told the ushers, we had 2 ushers getting people to move to the proper spot, and I had 2 ushers who were catching people. And I thought, that may sound, a little presumptuous, but we have seen that before where people were slain in the Spirit. I had been slain in the Spirit before at another service, and so I just didn't want anybody to fall down and go boom. That's basically what it was. So the worship was really good that night, and on the last song, as it was playing, I got out of my seat in the front row, and I was walking up the stairs. And I was walking up the stairs. I thought afterwards I don't know why I said these things, but this is what I said. I said, Jesus, this is your deal. I have done everything you've wanted me to do. If you don't show up, they're not going to blame me. I think you know what they're going to say? Rick's the basketball coach and the AD. He's not the real pastor. They're going to blame someone else, you. So I went over, I opened in prayer, and I started to talk. And I had written a sermon on that was then and this is now, how God healed 2,000 years ago, he still heals today. And I was almost finished. And one of the things I learned when I was in college, when you were talking, you had to move around. I'm not like John Lipinski. He's all over the place, but I'm, or Tom. But, I moved around. I'm looking at both sides. And as I was getting there finished, I'm looking over to my right. And as I turned back to the left, I blurted out, Jesus is here, face to face. He was in the middle aisle. He was wearing all white. He had his arms out. I looked at everything from the top of his head to the tip of his toes I was looking at. But to myself, I paused and I thought, you actually came. So prayer stopped. Sermons, I prayed. I said, okay, it's time. If you need prayer, we're going to come up the left-hand aisle. I went down the stairs. And when I got to the first person in line was a young gal who was in our church all the time. She was very devoted. Her name was Karen Baldock. And I went to reach out to pray for her, and she went down, and fortunately they caught her. And at that point, it was just like for the next hour, people were rejoicing everywhere. So when it was all over, everybody was excited. I was exhausted. And I told Bob, I said, normally I'll help you tear down like we normally do, but I said, I got to go home. So my wife and I leave, and we get in the car, and it's total silence. Finally, 5 minutes or so in, my wife turns to me and said, my wife's name is Sharon. Sharon says to me, did you really see him? And I said, I did. And I described him. And she said, I saw him too. She said, do you know where he went when you walked down to start praying? I said, no. I was afraid to look. She said, he walked right in front of me. He walked over to where you were. And as you reached out to put your hand out, his spirit engulfed you. And it was actually Jesus praying for the people. I had goosebumps that night. And what it taught me was a couple of things for sure. Jesus hears our prayer. Every prayer I said, everything I told him, he heard it. Number 2, he wants the glory. He was there to make sure everybody was singing at the end, thanking God, praising Jesus. He got the glory because he did it. We were excited as a church. The people who got healed gave testimony later the next week and so on. It was a great night. But I learned then that I never have to worry. I'm going all the way. For me personally, I'm going all the way with Jesus, no matter what, because he's real. Don't let anybody tell you, Well, you know, we don't really know. Yeah, we know. We know. And that's my story, July 20th, 1980.